What is up, everybody? I hope you're having a great Monday. Make sure on my phone we are live. Just give it a second for people to jump on. I am in the studio because we have some content we're doing today, as well as some podcasting that is happening. I cannot believe it's another Monday, as I say every Monday. Hopefully you guys had an incredible week last week, as well as a great weekend. Today I want to talk about recruiting and hiring great salespeople. It's something that we're all trying to do, especially if you're trying to build out a downline. How do you recruit and attract A-list talent? And how do you vet out whether a person is good at sales or not? I'm curious, people's take on what makes a great salesperson, because I'm going to give you guys a couple different things I look for. It's gone down recently because ZipRecruiter and Indeed and all of them, they tend to get smart. And as they watch us, we recruit all over the nation. So little context for Finder Media, we have tons of salespeople that we hire. And we're recruiting all over the nation. So we use Indeed to post. We've used ZipRecruiter. We've kind of used it all. Monster. We've used LinkedIn, Glassdoor, all of those we've used. We find Indeed works the best for us right now, besides headhunting. Like the best salespeople come through referral, or they come through headhunting, because 9 times out of 10, if you're really good at sales, you have a job and you don't need to actually go and post your resume anywhere. You're going to be recruited out of that job. So headhunting is the real way you want to get salespeople, or through referral. The problem with that for us is we're trying to hire, 10 salespeople a month, give or take, depending on our needs. And it's hard to get 10 really qualified referrals or 10 headhunted salespeople every single month, because the amount of activity that takes on LinkedIn or whatever is pretty difficult. So we tend to go towards Indeed. I think last month we probably had like 10,000 applications from Indeed all across the nation for our sales positions. We then, our first kind of line of defense is we do an assessment where we have people take an assessment, a sales assessment, to answer some sales questions, essentially. And that gives us at least a way to weed out the people who just aren't good at all. And then we have them take a predictive index. So a predictive index is like a DISC assessment. But what I love about the PI is the PI takes probably 5 minutes to take. So it's something very quick. Because I've gone back and forth and debated here. I don't know if you guys do personality tests with the hiring that you do, but I've gone back and forth because a good salesperson, a lot of times, at least in my industry where you're cold calling on insurance agents, real estate agents, small business owners, sometimes they don't have the patience to sit through a long sales assessment or a long predictive analytics, personality assessment. So you have to give them things because they're just putting their resume out there. And they are putting their resume out there with these ZipRecruiter type functions to every single job posting out there. And so they need to budget where they're going to spend their time. And if they see a huge, long test that they have to take, a lot of times that deters salespeople. And I have often found that the greatest salespeople have very little patience, or at least in the industry I'm in. So it depends on what you're selling, but very little patience. And so someone who doesn't have the patience to take that test might be someone I want to talk to. But regardless, we get like 10,000 applications, let's say. We weed through them through a sales assessment, couple question test. That gets us down to a certain amount of people. We send them a PI, a predictive analytics, personality test. We basically have found that in sales, in our sale, there are a couple personality traits that we look for. We look for a really high A, which a high A would be like dominance, someone who's independent, someone who, wants it their way, someone who, maybe they're strong-willed. And then we look for a high B. I have found that the B needs to be a little higher than the A. The B stands for extroversion. It's kind of your people person, social person, someone who doesn't mind having a conversation with new people, who walks into a room and is not shy. And again, keep this in mind. It doesn't mean that people who aren't a little shy when they walk in a room can't sell. It just means we have found, rule of thumb for the median, that the majority of salespeople are going to have dominance, where they're independent, they want it their way, strong-willed, they're likable and social, so they're outgoing. We have found that the majority of people that are good in sales have those character traits, but it doesn't mean you can't have outliers on either end of the spectrum that can do well. But for us, it's a volume game. I'd rather take the risk on what I know has proven results. We also see what I call is like a low C, so low patience. Maybe they're not as caring as they should be because we want a little bit of that aggression in the closer because they're going for the one call close in essence. And so we're looking for a lower C. And then the D, we need it to be a little higher than their patience. The D stands for detail. It stands for other things, but it stands for detail ultimately on the PI, where someone like an accountant or an engineer is going to have a really high D. So their D is going to be way up here on the graph. And maybe their B is going to be really low. We're looking for a salesman who has less than average patience, less than average attention to detail, but they have some details, hooking back a little bit because we find that to take good notes, to process the leads appropriately, to think through their call cadences, they have to have some attention to detail. So we're using this PI, personality test, to try to map out, okay, does this person have a personality that tends to do well in this sale? How would we know that? Well, we've had all of our current salespeople take personality tests. So we've had all of our current ones. We've had everybody that's come through now take personality tests. So we literally have hundreds and hundreds of these things that have been taken. And so we can now look at the ones who produce versus the ones who don't and go, wow, the majority tend to fall into being a captain or being a maverick or being a persuader. Like, we know the personalities that tend to do well in our sales process, which allows us to narrow in our focus. And then it gets down to really the 4 things we look for when it comes to hiring a great salesperson. And these are terms that I'll try to give clarity around because I might have a different definition of it than you do. But the first thing I look for in a great salesperson is energy. And I'm not just talking about energy in terms of volume of voice or dynamic. I'm talking about energy in terms of even the feel that you have when you're around them. You know this, not to get all woohoo, but it's true. You enter into a room with somebody that has good energy. You get on a Zoom with somebody that has good energy. They just bring you up. They lift the room up versus bringing it down. They make the room feel like it has less tension versus more tension. So you're looking for someone with great energy. Now, I tend to define that as someone who's smiling, someone who is making eye contact, someone who is carrying the conversation, and someone maybe who has dynamic in their voice and is not monotoned. That's how I tend to define energy. Someone who's maybe a little bit fidgety, not to the point where it's unprofessional, but you can tell they have some energy built up and they're excited to be there, because that translates, I think, through the phone, especially in our sale. That energy translates. And if you know, in sales, there's this tactic called match and mirroring. Right? So I believe in match and mirroring to a certain degree, but I always tell people the key to the match and mirroring process in my mind is ultimately the pacing. So you might need to match and mirror somebody so you don't overwhelm them because you're coming in out of the blue on a phone call, and you can't come in like a used car salesman to an old lady in Texas who's talking real slow, and you can't come in from the Northeast with super high energy and expect to build rapport and build trust. So the match and mirroring process is all about, hey, I don't want to overwhelm you so I can build rapport and build trust. But the key ultimately is I'm going to start pacing, which means I'm going to start setting the tone and bringing people up to the energy and the urgency that I want them to feel and have. And so I always encourage, salespeople, hey, man, you got to have great energy, because regardless of where you start on the call to build rapport, you need to end the call with such excitement, enthusiasm, and energy that person gets off that call and just goes, man, I want to talk to Luke Akery every single day. That guy just fires me up. So you have to have energy in the interview process, energy and how you treat the leads, and energy and how you treat the prospect that you're talking to. So I always tell people, like, my definition of if you want to be successful, like, this is what I'll teach my kids. It's showing up, doing what you don't want to do, but you know you need to do, doing it with the best attitude for long periods of time. That, to me, is if you want to be successful in anything you do, whether it's, playing a sport, playing music, to being in insurance, to being in business, whatever it is, I promise you, if you show up and do the things you don't want to do, but you know you need to do, and you do it with the best attitude possible, and you do it for long periods of time, you will be successful. You can't not be successful. But most people, they don't even show up. Some people, they show up and they don't do what they know they need to do. They show up, but they don't make their phone calls. They don't do the post on social. They don't do the things they know they need to do it. Or some people, they show up, do the things they know they need to do, but they do it with a poor attitude. So the result that they get is a poor result because they're doing it with a poor attitude. And some people, man, they show up, they do what they don't want to do when they don't want to do it. They do it with the highest level attitude, but they only do it one time every month. And they don't get the results because it's not for long periods of time. I promise you, man, you need to hire salespeople and recruit salespeople that have that definition of what success looks like in implementation. And I have seen that drive just result after result. So first thing I look for is energy. Second thing I look for is communication skills. And what I'm looking for here in terms of communication skills is, can Luke Acree, this sales candidate, can he carry a conversation? Is Luke Acree engaging in his conversation? Can he storytell? Is Luke Acree quick-witted, meaning can he think on his feet? Because I have found in sales, you have to be a clear communicator, concise in your communication. You have to be a great storyteller in how you communicate. And then almost most importantly, you have to be able to think on your feet. You have to be quick-witted in how you come up with things. That is what you need in sales, or at least your sales toolbox, to be really, really effective. So how do I test this in some of my interview processes? One is I tell them to tell me their story, meaning walk me through your resume here. You thought it was important enough to put on paper. Walk me through why you started here, why you went to this school, why you chose to make the changes you made. I'm specifically looking, can they keep me engaged and storytell and sell themselves to me, and why they are a great candidate and why every decision that they've made matters in their life. So I'm looking for that. It also allows me to dive deeper into calling BS on some of the things, and it allows me to test, are they quick-witted? Can they think on their feet? And I'm not trying to throw people off to the point where, you try to, I always tell my people, try to focus on something they should be good at, i.e. if they were selling home security and you saw that in their resume and their story, and you ask them, hey, where'd you rank in the salespeople at the home security company? How many were there? Where were your rankings? What was your quota? Blah, 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 to kind of check where they were at and what their experience was there. Then ask them, hey, what was the number one and number two objections you got when you were trying to close somebody on a home security system? Awesome. Hey, let's role play that situation right now. If it was talking to the wife, let's role play that. Imagine you're in my living room right now selling me a home security system. We've gotten through the whole presentation, and you get to the end and you want me to sign, and I say, hey, look, I really like this, but I need to talk to my wife. Go ahead. How would you overcome that? Because if they actually did sell home security systems, and if they were actually decent in what they just laid out for you, what they were able to do, they should be able to handle that number one objection that they got at their previous work. And I want to test them on that ability. So I'm looking for sales communication ability, and I want to test them on something they know. I don't want to test them on trying to overcome an objection that we get all the time, because they might not know how to do that. And even they might be a great athlete, but they've never played this sport before, so they need a little bit of training to be great at that sport. I want to test them on a sport they said they've been playing, that they've been doing, so I can see. All right, third thing I look for. So if you're following along, I look for energy, I look for communication skills, I look for drive. So this you could label as motivation. What's your motivation? What's your drive? What is going to keep you calling through adversity after adversity after adversity? One thing I should mention on the communication, which is really important that I didn't mention, is this person naturally a good questioner? And are they naturally curious? Are they able in their communication to you ask you questions to bring out of you things? Because that's a great salesman is a great person who can ask great questions, because the person who can ask the best questions usually leads the conversation. So I'm also looking for that in communication. Sorry, I just didn't want to miss that for you guys. But third thing I look for is drive, motivation. This is really hard to vet for because people are full of BS and they tell you whatever they think you want to hear. So what I try to look for is, and I think I got this from Elon Musk, not him literally, but watching an interview from him of how he talks to people and interviews people. It's like you're looking for, was this person incredible at anything they've done in their life? So if they played sports in high school, were they the captain on the high school team? Was this person did they have a hobby, a passion, and were they into it at a level that shows drive and motivation? So an example would be like if you were interviewing Luke Acree out of community college there when I was in high school, no sales experience really. I mean, I sold some Verizon cell phones, but no real sales experience. But what I could speak to is, man, I was in a family band. Music was my passion. And from 13 to 19 years old, we did music. And if you asked me about that music, I could tell you, man, not only did we, come together as a band, I was calling on youth pastors and festival places to try to get us to play there, talking to them. I obviously got us into the studio. We competed in a Longwood Battle of the Bands and ended up going to a national competition and blah, 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 blah. I could speak in detail, and also I could speak with what I would call like passion around the subject of what I was really interested in. And it shows that, okay, Luke just didn't, play music and want to be in a band and did nothing about it. He actually took action and did something. So this is why grades matter. They only matter to showcase that you can complete something, that you're passionate about a subject matter. So if you can prove that out with, hey, I love web design. Okay, well, show me your portfolio. Hey, I love sales. Well, tell me the sales leaders that you look up to. Tell me what you've sold in your life. I love business. Okay, tell me what you've done, because I'm looking for people who can take their ideas, their desires into implementation. That's what drive and motivation is all about. You can tell me you're driven all day long, but your actions tell me what you really are. And so I'm looking in their life. Can I vet out that this person actually completes on the things that they're passionate about? Because if I can vet that out, man, we got something here. And I'm looking for people that can overcome adversity. Another thing I tend to ask people a lot of times on these things is I'll ask them, hey, tell me about the hardest thing you've had to overcome in your life. And then tell me how you overcame it, and tell me what was the thing you learned the most from that situation. And I'm trying to look at what was this person up against? What do they normally go to in their mind, what they consider hard? Because that teaches me a lot about people as well. Hang on one second. I think my video might have glitched. Let me know if you can still hear me. I'm going to pull up the channel over here to make sure that it's still going. Shout out to everybody, man, out at MedicareCon, too. I know Andrew's out there. If you're at MedicareCon, go check Andrew Sachs out and Marcy Frazier. They will sell you some magazines for sure, but you should be out there. Yeah, it looks like I'm still good, I think. Joe Frazier, I need to see all these pics of the Acre Bros on tour. Oh, gosh. I don't know if you want to see that. I'll see if I can post in this comments a link to a video. Oh, man, I was young and it looked raggedy, but we were playing a college, at a college campus band. I just saw that recently. That's why I think the music was on my mind. Okay, so third thing I look for is drive and motivation. I'm curious for you guys, Joe, like how you try to vet out somebody's drive. Like how do you almost like vet through the BS? Because it's kind of like work ethic. If you ask somebody, do they have work ethic? Everybody's going to tell you yes. And they're going to say, I got it from my dad, my mom, my grandfather, right? It runs in our family. We work hard. Nobody's going to outwork me. But you can't ever really tell. You're looking for almost like track record of work ethic. Drive is the same way in my mind. And I try to vet out how can I determine someone's drive and motivation, because ultimately, man, there have been people that have been maybe weaker on the energy and communication side, but they have just such immense drive that by sheer force, they make it happen. On top of that, I think of some of my best closers ever. One had a drug problem. One was living in their car, $40,000 in debt when they started working here. Another was literally broke and had lost their jobs. Like there was so much that was wrong. Uh-oh, I'm getting another notification. This tab is using extra resources. I'm going to dismiss that. But meaning they had just things that they had gone through in their life that made them have drive and motivation. Fourth thing I look for, and I'm going to close with this one, right, because we got to get started on our Monday, and it's already 19 minutes in. Fourth thing I look for is character. Character meaning the ethics and morals of this person, and is this a good person or a bad person? Is this an other-centered person or a selfish person? And Zig Ziglar said it best. If you want to be rich, right, if you want to be successful, the fastest way to get success is to help other people become successful. The best salespeople in the world believe in the products and services that they're selling at a true intrinsic level, and they actually push it upon people because they know it will help them, not because they're just trying to get a commission check. And once you reach that level where you're just calling to help people, as maybe cliche as that sounds, you reach a new level because you face no rejection. Now it's more about evangelism than it is anything. It's like, hey, I know I can help you. I'm just trying to earn a chance. And by me providing you value, a result of that will be you will pay me and you will refer people to me. But ultimately, man, I'm trying to change your life because I believe in these products and services. I believe in what I'm doing. I look for character. Character is another really hard one to vet out. You look at track record, look at how they talk about their old employees and that were around them, or team members, I should say, their boss that they used to be with, the other companies. That gives you some insight. Ask them, hey, if I called your leader, Luke, what would he say your greatest weakness is? And a lot of times you'll find that people struggle to not tell you the truth in that moment because they actually think you're going to call Luke their other leader, and they know it has to align with what Luke's saying. So you might get the raw, real answer. Ask them where they stacked up in the rankings, and then ask them why they weren't number one, right? Because a lot of times these people weren't number one at their last sales position. So ask them why. What did they identify? See if they take extreme ownership, and if they actually know the reasons why they weren't number one. See if they blame others, right? See if they actually have good answers to show that they want to self-develop, they want to learn. So you're looking for character. Do they treat people with honesty, integrity, respect? Are they practicing in? Are they culturally the person that you want? And this comes back to your values. Do they represent you? Because that's truly who they are. Like when they're selling to a client, is this the experience you want your prospect, your client to have? Because this person is a mini representation of you. And honestly, man, I do not get this one right so many times. And I wish I would have focused it more and more in the beginning on character and less on like skill. But like everybody, I made the classic mistake and focused way more on skill in my interview processes. And now as I've matured and gotten older, I focus way more on character-based questions and drive-based questions, because to me, that ultimately I can work with. I can't work with somebody who has talent but has no character and no drive. I just can't do it. It just doesn't work for me. So there you have it, guys. There is what I look for when I'm recruiting top salespeople. So I know you guys are looking to recruit A players. One thing I have found to be true that I learned from an Alex Hormozi podcast, or is where the epiphany happened. Alex Hormozi was talking about a billionaire that he was being mentored by, and the billionaire said he's never seen someone who he's hired as a player that hasn't shown that they're an A player within the first 2 weeks. Meaning, if he's hired somebody thinking they're an A player and within the first 2 weeks he's questioning whether they're an A player or not, they are 100% not an A player. And I have found that to be true in my life as well in growing Reminder Media. It is wild how immediately within 2 weeks, you know if you're dealing with somebody that actually is an A player, or I should maybe even caveat and say has the great potential to be an A player. Why? Because they're coming in with energy. They have skill. Maybe it needs to be refined through training. They have drive and motivation, and they have immense character. And these people take initiative. They don't wait to be told. They're actually asking what they should be doing next. A players are what you need. Tom Bailu put a post up on his threads the other day that said, most entrepreneurs and founders waste so much money keeping B players on the team. And it's like every week you keep a B player costs you 5x their opportunity or their salary and opportunity cost. 5x their salary and opportunity cost. And I tend to believe that. So Monday mindset, there you go. Get out there and win for you, for your family, for your clients. Let's make it happen this week. Appreciate you guys. See ya.